morning, everyone. How's it going? Welcome into yet another episode of the Coffee Break. This one was kind of a little last minute to live stream, but decided to send it anyways instead of doing a recording. Only live on YouTube today. So if you're tuning in live, I appreciate you. If you're watching later, I still appreciate you. We got a lot of fun stuff going on this week at Foundation. While I wait for some people to roll in, we'll already kick it off with the stuff dropping over at foundationdisc.com. First off, we had Ledgestone, I believe it's technically Wave 1. It's like the second release of the year, but I think the first one was like preseason. So Ledgestone Wave 1 is live over on the site right now. We have a bunch of cool stuff. I know there's like some crystal buzzes with like ghost stamps that are sick. There's some like Crystal Flex Raptors, Big Z drives, really cool Lunas. There's like a triple foil UV zone. All kinds of fun stuff. There's also still some Cigarras and Ricky's Proto Putter and Captain's Raptor in stock too. So if you're a Discraft fan, if you head over to foundationdisc.com right now, a lot of really cool stuff in stock. From House of Discs, we've got some cool releases this week. So we have the Kristen Lott Graces. It looks like we'll have a 10th anniversary Berg coming soon. I don't know if that's this week or not. And then the P4, which I believe, could be wrong, but I believe the P4 is the originals version of the Discmania Tactic, if I'm not mistaken there. So that's going to be an exciting one. And then also live on the site right now, we have the OTB Open MVP discs pre-sale, which there's a bunch. Just got confirmation the P4 is just the Tactic. So I'm really excited about that. I think it comes out this week. It might come out next week. Sometimes this list I'm looking at is like what's coming in the warehouse and not necessarily what's releasing. So that's coming soon. The MVP discs for the OTB Open are also live on the site for pre-sale. There's a lot of really cool Proton Particle Glow discs. There's also some great, what was the other plastic? I think it's Prism Proton Soft, like Craves, and some Proton Soft ranges, stuff like that. A lot of their really popular molds. The big heavy hitter, I think, is going to be the Particle Glow Proton Hexes. Those are going to be sick. So a lot of cool OTB Open MVP pre-sales live. We might have the Prodigy Tour Series this week. That's either coming in this week or next week. They look awesome, the new Prodigy Tour Series. So that's going to be really sick. And then the final thing that's happening this weekend, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, is the biggest MVP restock we have ever gotten as a company. I believe Brad said we have every one of their molds and at least one of the plastics hitting the site. So pretty much everything that's popular, trails I've seen over there, more glitches, some more neutron ranges, a bunch of hexes, Simon line time lapses, all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be a big MVP week this weekend. So check out that. We haven't announced it yet, but we have something else big hitting the site Friday. So it's not a disc. This is if you remember, if you've been watching the Coffee Break for a while, you remember I talked about 4 surprises. 3 of them have happened. This is the 4th. So that's Friday. Really excited about that one. That is, if you go to our site, you'll see the question mark tabs. You click on that. It just says 328. That's that. So that tab will transition into something new this weekend. So excited about that. I don't think most people will guess it because it's not something that we ever really planned to do, but Trevor had the idea and has been leading the charge on it, and he's done a phenomenal job, and I'm really excited to release that. So that's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see kind of the acceptance of it. We'll see. Oh no, it's excited. I think it's going to be good for a lot of our audience, a lot of disc golfers. But it's for a very like niche market of our disc golf audience. So I think it's a market we reach a lot, and I think we're gonna be able to serve them in another way, which is really exciting. But I'll talk a lot more about it next week after it's already happened, so then I can kind of walk through the nitty gritty of why we did it, all of that. There's also, outside of disc golf, something else cool happening Saturday with Foundation. Not as cool as the Dude Perfect collab, so get that out of your mind, because I got to be careful now when I'm talking about stuff outside of disc golf. But Foundation's also doing something fun on Saturday, so that's kicking something new off. I'll talk about both of those more in depth next week, because once they happen, then I can answer a little bit more questions and talk through some of that. So, but no, it's an exciting time at Foundation. Some really cool stuff launching, some really cool new things, and we'll see how the reception and everything is. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be fun, but I'm excited about it, which I think a lot of people will be too. So that's what's happening this weekend, heading into this week. I want to talk about two things. First, I just finished. I like to always kind of do like quick book reviews on here whenever I finish a book. So I just finished Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett, and really, really solid read. So it basically is it's broken down into 33 laws that are basically just generic business like advice from Stephen Bartlett, who funny enough, I bought this book and I didn't really know anything about him. I just heard good things about the book. And then I listened to his podcast with Mr. Beast, and I listened to his podcast with Alex Hermosi, and really liked the podcast, which is just called Diary of a CEO, and then read his book and really enjoyed the book. So he really knows what he's talking about now that I've read the book. A lot of it makes a lot of sense. So I highly recommend it. I think if you're someone who is in leadership position at a company, you want to be in leadership position at a company, or you're an entrepreneur, I think this is a great book. Overall, it gives a lot of really tactical advice, and it's a pretty broad advice because, like, I noticed several of the chapters didn't really apply to me, but then several of the chapters applied a lot to me, and I feel like most people will have that experience where it's kind of, since it's giving broad business advice, but like broad is across the whole book, but each chapter is very specific. I think that a lot of people will find something that applies to where they're at currently. One of the big things that I took from the book that I like talked about in our most recent kind of like full staff meeting, and he hit on it a few more times after that, was basically there were several different laws that pertain to this, but the general idea was like focusing on small measurable improvements. The idea of like 1% better every day. He also talked about, I believe it's called the Kaizen principle from Toyota. But a lot of it was about sharing ideas, finding ways to make what you're doing more efficient, finding ways to improve small things, focusing on the details. And then when you focus on that and focus on constant improvement, how it creates bigger progress in the longer term versus if you're just looking at a really big, grand goal, that seems really overwhelming. But the first step towards it doesn't seem that overwhelming. So breaking it down can be good for you and good for your team. That was one of the big takeaways for me, was basically just, hey, what we're doing currently, what are ways that we can just minutely improve it? And if we're always focusing on minutely improving it, getting 1% better every day, which sounds super cliche, but it's the idea behind it of like, just, hey, things that we regularly do, how can we do them slightly more efficiently? How can we do them at a slightly higher level consistently? And when you do that consistently over a long period of time, you end up making giant improvements, even though all the improvements you actually made were small incremental ones. The examples of it were the Toyota Kaizen principle. That's the 1% better. Then you also had later in the book, he talks about, which I had heard about this before. I forget his name, but he talks about, I actually just opened this. One of them was the Manchester United manager, Alex Ferguson, back in the day. He had a very similar ideas. And then I wish I could find him. It was towards the end of the book, but the Great Britain cycling coach, basically he came in, and the Great Britain was one of the worst cycling teams of all time. And then he focused on small improvements, like making the seat more cushiony, rubbing alcohol on the wheels so they were slightly grippier, focusing on the little things like that. And by doing that and being able to measure and see the progress, the team started to believe, they started to actually get faster. And next thing you knew, it was one of the most dominant cycling runs any team has ever had over a decade. And it was like because of those little things. So anyways, that was a big takeaway for me that I felt was most applicable to where Foundation is right now. But I think that anyone who's in a like business leadership, entrepreneur, that type of, or has aspirations to be there, could get a lot out of this book. So really enjoyed that book, highly recommend it. And I'm now starting to read, what's it called? Poor Charlie's Almanac, I believe is the book. So that's business book wise. I also just finished Radical by David Platt, and I'm just starting The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I believe how you say his name. Something. both which I read a long time ago, but I'm excited to read again. That's a book update for those of you who care about that. Some people do, some people don't. Final thing before we get to the Q&A I wanted to briefly talk on is, I don't know, I more just wanted to use like kind of vent and get this out there to see if there's any other entrepreneurs that, yeah, no, David Platt is under, Adam just said, Platt's under serious scrutiny these days. He is. But the book Radical, I think, stands true. It still is a phenomenal book. Because, you know, everyone is a sinner, even church leadership. And, you know, I think that I haven't looked too much into the David Platt scrutiny. It seems pretty valid, the little bit I have looked into it. But still, because what's funny is I finished reading Radical, I said that to someone, and they were like, David Platt, I don't know if you'd be saying that name right now. And I looked into it, and I was like, okay, but still, that book is a phenomenal outlook on the true call of Christianity in modern America, where the American dream and materialism runs the world, and what it actually means to be a disciple, and how the call of Christ is a radical call. That still stands true. So the idea behind Radical, and I think the book itself, I really enjoyed my second time reading it. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. Anyways, wanted to kind of talk through this, and just because what's funny is, as you read a lot of like business books, and as you grow in business and as a leader, and as your business grows, yada yada yada, delegation is one of the big things, right? Where like stuff overflows on your plate, you hire, you replace yourself in the business. That's how business grows. And then you're able to delegate tasks off of your plate, which frees up more time for you to then pursue other things, blah, blah, blah. And that's the growth aspect. And I was literally just talking to a friend this morning about this, was like, when I started Foundation, and one of my whole goals of being an entrepreneur and owning a business was I wanted the freedom and the ability to be like really present with my family and with my kids, right? That was something that my dad had growing up. He was an entrepreneur. He's a business owner. And so like every basketball practice he was at, every basketball game he was at, we got to go on vacations. Like pretty much if it was like a drop of a hat, we wanted to go out for the weekend, we could. Yeah, like so on and so forth. And so that was something that like growing up, I was very fortunate, and I got to like see that. And so as I became an adult and realized that was why that was able to happen, that became what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to be a business owner, wanted to be an entrepreneur, so that I was in control of my own schedule. And what's funny is now I'm at the point in my life where like some of that is starting to work. Like there's always, as a business owner, there's always a long list of things you can be working on, right? But if I wanted to, on Friday this week, leave at 12 and go take Luca, to my son, to Charlottesville, like an hour and a half away for whatever, like I could. But what's interesting that I never really anticipated was the guilt that I would feel in doing so. Not guilt of with being with family, but the guilt of not working, not being at work. And it's a really weird thing. The only thing I can think of is that it's just I think it's twofold. One, the last 6 years, and more so the first like several years, work was a very big priority. And what's funny is in that time, it was a big priority because I wanted to one day sit in a seat that I'm almost in, where I could scale back, because I now have this is very true, I have a Foundation has a phenomenal team of very talented people that work at they're able to do things at a level that I could never do, right? Our videos, the planning, the warehouse side, like all of it is operating at a level that I myself was never as talented in any of those areas. And so I think that has been awesome. But what I never anticipated was the guilt you feel as a business owner when you get to that part of like, you're not working. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm not doing a good job explaining it, but it's a weird one, because I've been talking to my wife I think that it's important for the business, if we want it to continue to grow, which I do, that I need to remove myself from the nitty gritty day to day as much as possible, because that limits everyone else's workflows to a certain extent, right? When more and more things rely on me, then less things can be self-sufficient, but more importantly, it doesn't empower people to be able to do their job at their full potential because they relying on me just for the sake of relying on me. Like and it's my fault. Like I put myself into positions where like X, Y, and Z can't happen without me doing X, Y, and Z. And so it's like not as efficient as if it was just like so-and-so could just run with their task and do it from A to Z. And the only reason I'm in there at point Y is because I want to be. You know what I'm saying? And so I've been talking to my wife of like, well, I think that it's good if I'm able to like maybe shift to like a hybrid schedule where I work from home a little bit, I work at the warehouse one day, and then I'm in the office a little bit, so that the leaders in place can lead, and also so that people can just actually do their job without me interjecting at different points. And so I've been like talking through that, and I've also been talking about like working from home, but like the part that's weird is it's almost a guilt of asking people to do something that I'm not currently doing anymore, which as of right now I am. But like, and I don't expect this of any employee to clock in and clock out to hit 40 hours a week just to hit 40 hours a week. Like if someone comes in and they have a task list, 10 wide, and they finish line item 10 by Thursday, everyone's always been encouraged of, hey, go do what you want to do. Like if you're done with your work on Wednesday afternoon, that's sick. Come in Thursday and, create more content or whatever, or take a half day on Friday, whatever it might be. Like, if you're hired for like task list, not to check a box. Like, it's not like I got to be in the office 40 hours a week just to be in the office 40 hours a week. It's like, no, you're here to do a job. When you do your job, you're done. But the cultural expectation is like you're in there 40 hours a week. So then that like cultural pressure applies to me as well of I'll get in at 8, work till 4. That's my schedule. And it's like, okay, but if I succumb to that and I'm always doing that, then I can never do the one thing I wanted to do, which was, and Luke is not at the age where like this is like, he doesn't have basketball games, because I think that when it's, here I'm saying something that maybe not be true, but I think when there is a basketball game that I need to leave work at 3 instead of at 4, I'm going to do that. Right. But maybe I'm wrong, because I thought that when I got to this point, it would be very much like, sorry, let me mute my computer. It'd be very much like easy for me to be like, oh, Lizzie wants to take Luca to go blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take off work to go do blah, blah, blah. Because it's a privilege that where Foundation is at right now, it doesn't need me to survive. Like I can go on vacation for a week, and when I come back, my laundry list was just as long as when I left. It didn't get drastically longer. It's not, I don't have to go, but like in the early days of Foundation, and even just like 2 or 3 years ago, if I went on vacation, I had to work. I didn't have an option. My laptop had to be with me. I had to be basically doing what I was doing at work. I just happened to do it at the beach instead, which, don't get me wrong, it was fun. But it's like if I didn't do it, it didn't get done. Whereas that's not true anymore, and that's awesome. That's a great thing. But for some reason, I still have that mindset of I have to be working just for the sake of working. And that's what I'm kind of working through of like, I don't have to be working just for the sake of working. I don't expect anyone else to be working just for the sake of working. And it's also good for me to have the like free time and creative outlets so that I can like start pursuing other things, other areas. That's how, Foundation will grow, is like, okay, now I have free time. I can go chase down other areas of growth, other revenue possibilities, yada, yada, yada. So I don't really have a like, this is more just me venting of like, that's what I'm going through right now. And I never expected as an entrepreneur to have the guilt of essentially, I feel like I have to be at work just for the sake of I feel like I have to be at work. You get what I'm saying? And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't have to be at work just to be at work. That's the whole reason I wanted to be an entrepreneur, is so I didn't have to do that. And that's the whole reason I want to run the company in a way that I don't expect anyone else to do that. And and what's funny is I say that to everyone else. And Alex Lane just asked, is it a trust thing? Absolutely not. Because I trust, like I said, we have regular check-ins and stuff where I can like make sure things are happening. And if something's going away I don't agree with, I can like step in. But day to day, I'm very hands off on most of the areas. So like that's where I feel like I've done a really good job of that over the last few years, of being more hands off, where people know they can come to me if they need something, but I trust people to do the job. And I found when you trust people to do the job that you hired them to do, and you hire the right people, it's going to happen way better than if you're like, you don't trust them and you're in the nitty gritty and I'm like constantly looking over someone's shoulder while they're doing whatever. So I don't know. Just thought I'd throw it out there because that's something that I've been like mentally working through and talking to my wife about. Of I want to get where, and I think a hybrid schedule is my next step, where I'm going to have a home office and I can work from home some, because I also think that's going to be a big step for growth. Is it's a weird thing where if, and this has always been true, like if, by role, I'm the boss, right? By role. So when I'm in the office and there's a question and I'm sitting right there, like chain of command wise, there's no need for it to go through a chain of command because it can just come straight to me. Because like, well, at the end of the day, I'm gonna give the answer anyways. You know what I'm saying? So removing that allows everyone to lead and lean into their job that they're like doing more without having to rely. So I think that that's a good like next step. And I also really want to get where I'm working at the warehouse one day a week, mainly because right now I only work over here and this is where the media team is. And it's because I'm more plugged into the media team with my day-to-day roles. But I think getting over to the warehouse gives me a good opportunity, just to get eyes on how that operation works and that leg of the business works more, but also gives people over there access to me that the media team always has. Not that I'm the end-all be-all by any means, but when it comes to like, I have the vision of where I want Foundation to go, so there's just some decisions where it does have to be ran through me, and having more access to that I think is always a good thing. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. I just felt like this was the right platform to just kind of to vent about it, and maybe it wasn't, but I think it is. 'Cause I feel like some people will know exactly where I'm coming from, and hopefully there's some people that are 3 steps down the road that can be like, oh, I dealt with exactly that. This is what you're not looking at. This is what you're not thinking about, or you just got to send it. I don't know, but all right, let's get into some question and answers. These are all from Instagram. Also, we have a live chat, obviously, since I'm live on YouTube. So if any of you watching have questions, throw it in there as well. And I'll try to answer those questions. But got a bunch from Instagram, so let's see. This is one that we've talked about before, but I think after the most recent grit block is a good thing to re-talk about. Nolan Campbell said, could you see a future where the FPO field has a separate tour from MPO because of courses? So I definitely think there's a future eventually where FPO and MPO will have to be separated, not necessarily because of courses, although I think that is one of the benefits that comes with it, but more because of field size. Because if you look at it, like when both are playing at the same venue on the same weekend, both field sizes are capped, which more so hurts FPO than MPO. Right now, it's not like there's this huge demand for these tournaments where there's like, whatever. But as the sport grows and the professional side grows, it's going to be important, I think, for FPO to eventually live on its own and be its own product, so that yes, the courses can be a focus, but also the field size can improve. And get deeper, and with that, the purses would grow, yada, yada, yada. So I think that eventually that is a thing, but I don't think it's anytime soon, mainly because it's not sustainable for the Pro Tour to split its resources. And I think if FPO and MPO split right now, I think the FPO Tour would die, because I think that where it is right now, there's not enough resources for both, and so the MPO Tour would have to supplement the FPO Tour in a lot of ways. And there's not enough resources in the MPO Tour. It can't be like the NBA where they're just rich beyond belief. And okay, if they got to supplement the WNBA to help it grow, that doesn't matter. Like, sick. That's great. That's a good thing. They should do it, whatever. We're not at that point. So if they split it, the Pro Tour doesn't have the resources to just fully fund this new startup tour that the FPO Tour would be, because it's so used to being with the MPO Tour. And so I think that it would end up crumbling the Pro Tour as a whole. I think both would suffer. So I don't think that it's a good idea in the short term. I do think it's something that will eventually happen in the long term. And I think that the sport would be better off when it does happen, but we have to just do it at the right time. The courses is definitely one of the big aspects, though. I think FPO would really benefit from playing on courses designed specifically for them. I do think that would be a big one. Garth Hollis says, you have a set date for the new series of the Survivor Series, which I think is the Imposter series I think we was talking about, and it'll come out the same time as last year. We actually have our first planning meeting for it next week. We have a lot of really cool ideas to really one-up it, but it'll come out the same time. I think that's a good time of year for the release. So we'll probably shoot it midsummer. Last year we shot it in like September, so I think we'll shoot it a little bit earlier, but it will hold it until that release point. So Matt Harm 0989 said, what is your favorite part of running? I think my favorite part of running, I have two. I can't really pick one or the other, so I'm going to just say both. I think that one big part that I love is solitude's the way to put it. Just the going out there for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it might be, just me. Or, recently I've been running with Mikey from Overthrow, and I've loved that. But just having something where it's time, that it's quiet, that's intentional, that I'm either one-on-one with someone or it's just me and my thoughts. I think that's something that's extremely valuable to me. And so I really enjoy that aspect. And the other side I really love is the achievement side and just pushing yourself. Because there's just, growing up, I always played basketball. I always played sports, and sports give you this like physical, you push yourself past limits time and time again. And and I just don't have anything that does that. Like disc golf's a blast. Love disc golf, but it's not physically demanding. Like I can go play around a disc golf and like not feel sore. I love stuff that like is mentally challenging because you have to push through fatigue, and running gives you that most runs. Easy runs, obviously not, but like when I'm training and you're pushing past distances you've never been, and you're trying to hold a pace for longer than you've ever held before, like you just get to these moments that I feel like I don't normally get to in life, where my body is asking for me to stop and I can choose to mentally push through it. And I really enjoy that. So yeah, those are my favorite parts of running. Let me see what else. Adam said, how much stock do you put in the opinions of touring players on courses when the course doesn't suit their games as much, i.e. bomber throwers and wooded courses? I obviously, I think some, because touring pros are touring pros, like they know what they're talking about. But if you have, I try to listen to the majority, right? If the majority of pros go out to a course and all say this is a bad course design, it's a bad course design. But when you have like half the field or the majority of the field, it's like, this course design's fine. You have a few people that the course suits them a lot, they love it, and a few people the course doesn't suit them, they hate it. Then it is okay, well, you hate it because it doesn't suit you. You love it because it suits you. It's probably just a good course design. But I will say, like, when there's a great course design, it is pretty much generally loved by everyone. I think New London's a good example. I didn't really hear too many people hate on New London when they played at Touring Pros. And, like, it wasn't everyone's cup of tea. Like, it's a demanding course. It's a wooded course. It asks for a lot of shots that players a lot of times weren't comfortable throwing. There's OB in the woods. And there was some feedback, absolutely. But in general, everyone seemed to like it. So I think that when there is really, really good course design, it is generally beloved. But like the Sprinkle Valley, for instance, you had Ezra and Aaron Gossage hating on it during their practice round, but you had other pros love it. And I think that it ended up being a fine course. I don't think that it was the greatest course design I've ever seen. I don't think it was a terrible course design by any means. So, yeah. All right, back over to Instagram. Jason said, will Brody be invited back to the Dude Perfect trick shot? And if yes, can y'all make Foundation the team name instead of a group team instead of solo? If they have another trick shot world championships, Brody would be invited back. They were acting like that's going to be an annual thing. You know, it's always tough to know, like, does that actually turn into it? I don't know. But Brody would be invited back, not Foundation. So Could we ask them? Maybe, but Brody has a name and a brand in the trick shot world, and that's like Dude Perfect's audience will know Brody from when they used to do videos together. So of course, that's going to be, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if Trevor and I would get the invite back. Fingers crossed we would, but that's all up to Brody. So if Brody has because I'm sure, there's other people that would love to go to the Dude Perfect headquarters. So if Brody was like, hey, you know what, guys, I'm going to bring my X, Y, and Z person with me this time, we would not be upset by that. We'd be a little sad because we would want to go, but we weren't going to be upset at Brody over that. So Foundation, obviously we got to go and it was really cool. It, was a cool moment to see Foundation logo on a Dude Perfect video just via our hats and stuff, but it wasn't Foundation's not going to magically get the invite. Brody will get the invite, and Brody's name is the name that'll, run with it. So, this is a good question. Patricio del Pueblo said, are pros too whiny and play the victim, Sprinkle Valley hole 18? I don't think it's necessarily pros are too whiny / play the victim as much as it's just our society plays the victim a lot. Because it's just way easier and it's our natural instinct to push responsibility off of ourselves, even in situations where, yes, the responsibility can be pushed off. There's a book called Extreme Ownership that I read a while ago and I absolutely love. And essentially the idea behind it is there are things in life that are outside of your control, right? And there are things in life where are mostly outside of your control, but you could have done something. But in general, if you view everything as your fault, you take extreme ownership over that, what it does is it actually gives you the power in those situations. So let's use Sprinkle Valley hole 18. Was it the greatest course design of all time? No. I think everyone unanimously can agree no. Because, again, there are ways to break that hole. A lot of people are just chuck it deep and you'll go to the drop zone. I'm one of those people. What that would have done is just expose the bad hole design because, you shouldn't be able to just do that. That breaks the hole. So, was it good course design? No, I'm not going to say it was great course design. But was it as bad as it is being portrayed? No. But what's happening is by saying this is just a terrible course design, it's forcing me to do blah, 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 you can push all the responsibility off of yourself, and now that hole owns you because I gave that hole all the power, right? And we do that in life in general too, versus saying, I accept this is bad course design, but I'm still the one throwing the shots. So I'm still the one in control, and you know what, at the end of the day, yes, it asked for a nose-up forehand into a headwind. I threw it bad. That's on me. Guess then I have control in that situation where I can change it. So if I give the hole in this situation all of the power and I'm the victim, then I have no way of changing it. And so there's nothing I can do. So instead in life and in general, I think that the extreme ownership mindset to some might sound a little extreme, but what I've found is it's very freeing because what it allows you to do is when things happen, you can now look at it from a perspective of, well, what can I do or what could I have done to prevent that from happening or to make sure it doesn't happen again? And taking that extreme ownership instead of playing the victim in a lot of situations where we can choose to do that, right? Then in doing so, it gives you the power to make sure that doesn't happen again, and it gives you the opportunity to change. And you can, I don't know, I find it very freeing. I really like that mindset. So it's a mindset I try to stick to a lot of and I've had to explain it to our company too of hey, this is why I come from this mindset. I read, I really like this book, blah, 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 because there's going to be things that happen to Foundation that are out of our control. And I'm going to react in a way that, well, what can we do / what could we have done to make sure that doesn't happen? And I don't want people to feel like I'm coming at them and saying, this is your fault. But I want us to all feel like this is our fault because that allows us to change it and make sure it doesn't happen, even if something wasn't genuinely our fault. Even if, this is a great example, and this is the example I use with the company. I won't say this company's name, but there's one brand that we've done brand deals with in the past that is notoriously bad at getting back with us with revisions. So a video posts today, we get them the ad read 2 weeks ago. They have 2 weeks to get us the revision. The day comes of the video, and they either don't hit us with a revision that day or don't hit us with a revision, and next thing you know, we have to push the timeline back, and sometimes it's caused us to miss the ad read. You get what I'm saying? So is that our fault? No. We sent them the ad read 2 weeks ago, the exact day they wanted it. They did nothing for 2 weeks when they were contractually obligated. They're supposed to do something in those 2 weeks. They did nothing. Then it's day of. They send us a edit or something. We do the edit. They don't get back to us in time before the video posts. So now the video has to post, and that ad read either gets pushed into a different slot or whatever, and the company loses that revenue because this is either that ad read is a time-sensitive one and now can't be done, or that ad read now has to bump an ad read off of a different video, yada, 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 right? And so we can look at that, and it's very much a situation where it's very easy for us to sit back and say, we did what we were supposed to do, that sucks. So my challenge was, well, instead, the question I want us asking is, what can we do in that 2 week period to make sure that doesn't happen? It's not our fault, but what can we do? And so instead, if they want it 2 weeks in advance, we can send it 3 weeks in advance. Okay, now we give them a whole extra week, or we can send it 2 weeks and a half. And then at a week out, we can send the follow-up email and start to bug them. Hey, we need a revision. We're a week out. Hey, we need whatever. And what that can do is we can now, respond to them. And next thing you know, we have been able to now create a workflow that is not that much more work on us, but those ad reads get done every time, and we get the revision. And that's something where if we would have just played the victim, woe is me, this company sucks to work with, blah, 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 then we would have continued to lose, and we would have continued to lose ad revenue and ad deals because that would have continued to happen, or we would have just stopped working with that company. But instead, by just implementing a one-stop, like, hey, this is how we're going to handle it, now we were able to take control over that situation and make sure it happens. So are pros too whiny? No, I don't think it's just pros. I think that our society is too whiny in a lot of aspects, and people refuse to take responsibility and accountability for their actions and what they can control, and instead they look to, how can I push all this off of me and onto someone else? So yeah, might be an unpopular opinion, but it's my opinion. So Howling Wolf said, are we going to open it up to the public to join the Imposter Series? We will probably have a few slots that we can put applications open for. Yes. So, somewhat. Cody Speck said, best advice for starting a weekly disc golf league. What day is best format? So the day is going to depend a lot on your area and what days other weeklies are going on and people's freedom, so on and so forth. What format is best? Again, it depends a lot on what already is happening. If there's nothing happening in your area, then I think that just having a straight up weekly is better than nothing. So just like everyone come out. We used to run one that was a blast. That was a handicap weekly. This is at a time where there was one weekly going on Thursdays in our area. That was just a come play disc golf weekly. And then there was random draw doubles going on Sunday. And there were like tag matches every once in a while on Saturday. I think there was actually tag matches once a month, and the random draw was happening every week. But basically, there was like 2 weeklies going on. And so we started a handicap weekly where you basically, the first week, you just told us kind of like, this is what I typically shoot out here. And we set everyone to adjust to where, with your handicap, you on average shoot a 46. That was what we roughly estimated was 1,000 rated at this course. And then after your first week, what you actually shot adjusted your handicap. And then every week we had an average of what you're shooting to adjust your handicap, so everyone was playing on like a level playing field. And we made it a free weekly because the idea was we wanted new players to be able to come out and compete with the local pros. So some people were playing off of a 15 handicap. Some, like our best pros, playing off of 1 handicap. We never had anyone playing off of a plus handicap as it would be in golf. But anyways, so that was like our weekly we did, and we did that every Tuesday for a few years, and now there's weeklies going on pretty much every night, so we don't really do them anymore. But I That our general our we it was the biggest weekly in our area. We had like probably on average 30, 40 people. Now the weeklies are bigger. This was like pre-COVID when we started it. And so that was a huge success because I think the other big weekly was like 15 to 20. So it was a blast. So, if you already have a few weeklies going on, I think that's a fun one to add to the mix because it allows people who normally would show up to just the like, let's all play together weekly and get dominated. It allows them to actually compete. So that one's fun. All right, we'll take a few more questions here. Let me see. Oh, this is a good one. Luke the Nuke DG said, you mentioned being very risk averse. What are some of your tips to making calculated risks? So in general, I tend to stay away from stuff I don't understand. I think is a big one. I also like when it comes to the stock market, I recently don't have time to study and research individual stocks, so I do a lot more index funds and ETFs. But back in the day when I would research, I would a lot of times my first step is I would throw a little bit of money in a company I was interested in just so I had some skin in the game, because that I found would help me actually pay attention to it a little bit more but then I would go deep in research and try to find the like true value of the stock, try to look at kind of their business model a little bit more. I'd read everyone who liked the stock, why they liked it, everyone who disliked the stock, why they disliked it, and pretty quickly you could tell which one you felt like was going to be right. But a lot of my investing is I think a lot more in the longer term. So I've never I missed out on GameStop and AMC and stuff like that, but that's not why I invest. I invest so I can retire when I'm 65. I don't invest so that I can be a millionaire tomorrow. You know what I mean? And I just feel like that has a better success rate percentage-wise. When it comes to business, again, I try to stick with stuff that I know and that I feel like has a really, really high chance of success for a really low amount of effort or amount of risk. And there's some times where, the more I understand something, the more I'm willing to risk versus the less I understand something, the less I'm willing to risk. Like, for instance, Bitcoin, I didn't understand it at all. So I put $500 into Bitcoin because I was like, this is in 2021. I was like, man, I want to understand Bitcoin a little bit more. I'll put some skin in the game, threw $500 into it. It crashed shortly thereafter. And then I never really researched it more. Still don't fully understand the blockchain or anything like that. NFTs, none of that makes sense to me. So as soon as I broke even, I sold my Bitcoin and I think I had Ethereum or whatever it was, sold both of those and got out. Because if I don't understand something, I tend to avoid it. Or if I'm interested enough in it, I dig deep to make sure I understand all the ins and outs before tying money or stuff to it. So I don't know. I think because to me I think knowledge eliminates a lot of risk. Where if I understand something or I research it enough, a lot of times I can see the holes in it before I pursue it. So I can see, okay, this is the list of why this wouldn't work. If the list of why it would work is a lot smaller, I'm not doing it. If the list of why it would work is a lot bigger and the potential is way higher than I might lose X amount for the potential of gaining 20X that amount, I'm fine with that type of a risk versus I'm risking 10 to gain 12. I'm not fine with that type of risk. Doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I kind of pursue it. And like I said, modern day, I stick a lot more on index funds, ETFs, and stuff where it's like time investment instead of money investment, where the time could turn into money, but if it doesn't, I'm out a little bit of time. Okay, I'll answer this one from Instagram, then I'll take one more from YouTube. Wyatt Wood said, how do you recommend building confidence in front of a camera for a new YouTube channel? You got to just do it. That's the only way to build confidence. It's the only way, in my opinion, if you're not a naturally comfortable in front of the camera person. I wasn't. you got to just put yourself in front of the camera. And you'll learn over time. It's going to be awkward. You're going to suck at it at first. I did. Everyone did. And over time, you'll just get more comfortable. But it's just reps. You gotta make content, and the more important thing, you gotta post it. Because a lot of people make content and don't post it because they're waiting for it to be perfect. It'll never be perfect. We could improve every piece of content that comes out of this company. Could be improved in some way, shape, or form. But if we waited for everything to be perfect instead of just sending it, we would have no content on the internet. And what has happened is over the 6 years, our content today is in a drastically better place than it was 6 years ago. And the only way we learned it was by publishing what we felt like is good at that time, learning from feedback from audience, from analytics, all of that, and then improving and slowly improving over time. And now what we're able to put out today is drastically better content-wise at a drastically faster rate because now we've learned it. So you got to just do it. And don't do it. I think one of the big things people get caught up in is they start a YouTube channel or start an Instagram with the goal of making it big, making the Instagram big, making the YouTube big, making a living off of it, instead of making it around something they love and they could talk about forever. And if you do the latter, where you make it around something you love and you can talk about forever, and like it's something that, you know, you go home and you bug your wife talking about so much because of how much you love it. If you make content on that, you're gonna be able to make content forever, whether someone's watching it or not. And that's the type of stuff you want to be doing, because if it's just for the views, it's just for the analytics, then when that doesn't come, you're gonna stop. Or when you hit a slump, you're gonna stop. So I think that's the big thing. Okay. Final question. Let's see. This won't be the final one. This is a quick answer. Garth said, ever plan on doing some out-of-state disc golf trips? Yes, we do several of those. We're actually going to Music City Open next week. So, yeah. This is a good question. I'll answer these two because I can't decide between both of them. So we'll start with this one. P. McKinney said, can you talk about Break 68 and how you switched to the new MD3? I'm a legacy Innova MD3 thrower. So I switched to the new MD3s a while ago. I switched out of necessity because I was going to be pushing a disc that you could buy on our site. And I didn't want to be pushing the old MD3 and selling the new MD3, and then people see me throw it and fall in love with my MD3, and then the MD3 they buy was a different one. So I switched because of that, and then I actually fell in love with the new mold more than I loved the old mold. It's, in my opinion, a little bit less stable out of the box, but it's still a great mold. It still has a really similar hand feel. Excuse me. Still has plenty of stability for what I want it to do. So it's definitely a little bit of a different disc, but that's how I made the switch, and I ended up really liking it. And Break 68 was the best round of disc golf I've ever played as a whole. I think really the stretch from hole 7 to 15, really hole 8 to 15, but 7 I birdied, but 8 to 15 was, I kind of blacked out. I don't really know. I just was so like kind of in the zone. I think what it really was I just had adrenaline pumping and I was just so focused. My average heart rate during that round was like 139, I think is what it was. Which, to give you an insight, the next day we played the Goodbye New London video. So the exact same course, played singles on it, and my average heart rate was like 80 or 85, somewhere in there. So it was just like from the get-go, I was just amped up, and I was so focused on everything, every shot, like it mattered so much. And I think that is what allowed me to perform at a level that I normally don't. I also got lucky. I don't know if you were watching the putts, because it's easy just to be like, oh, that putt went in. But I was throwing some bad putts. They just were finding the basket somehow. It was one of those days where just everything clicked, which I think we always knew that was the day it was going to take. But I did lean on the MD3 as soon as I discovered I can't misalign with this disc. I threw basically just that disc. Like it was just, I was clicking with it. Timing felt good. I was really confident in it. I was committing to it, and I was throwing it so much farther than I normally do. So I just kind of stuck with that as soon as I discovered it. But I mean, hole 7, I played a little bad. I threw an okay tee shot. I threw my upshot too deep. I threw my upshot to the basket, hit the pole, skipped way off. and just kind of fluffed a putt that happened to go in. But then from that point on, hole 8, I played phenomenally. That trail just pushed me so far up there, got the birdie. That was great. Hole 9, I played fine. I made a putt that a lot of times I would miss. 10 was a great birdie. 11, the par save was phenomenal. Very happy with that. And then 12, 13, 14, 15, birdieing all 4 of those in a row was just kind of unheard of for me. I had birdied each of them individually, but to get them all in a row when it mattered was just crazy. So, yeah, I don't know. It was wild round. I think I'm retired my pink MD3. I just love it so much. I don't want to take it out of the bag, but I feel like I got to. I feel like I got to put it on the wall back there because it deserves it. That breaking 68 meant a lot to me. It was a goal of mine for 2 years, so I'm very happy I got to do it. So, okay, final question. Xavier said, as one of the biggest, if not the biggest, disc golf YouTubers, what was the actual business decision between sponsoring players? So I think when we first started Foundation, we sponsored players because everyone did. Then we realized it makes way more sense for us just to focus on content and get our reach through content because like our marketing budget is our media team's payroll basically, because that's where all of our reach and all that happens. And so we did that for a while, mainly because players were asking way too much money for what we felt like the ROI would be. So this year we broke the mold and we sponsored Ezra, and the reason was more so we felt like we could help grow his brand, and we felt like his brand really fit the Foundation brand well, and we felt like we meshed well together, that we'd be able to make some really good content that would give a different feel than our typical Foundation content. Like we're going to do a practice round with him at Music City. We did a few videos with him when he was here. We're going to go to another tournament later, do some practice rounds. He will make the Tour Championship, Lord willing, and when that happens, we'll do some content here, so on and so forth. So we'll have content all throughout the year where our brands can kind of mesh well together. And then on top of that, we felt like it also helps validify us as a retailer a little bit, where, we get our logo on coverage somewhat. That's not going to be a direct conversion, but it at least is like another place people see it, and then we can drive people to our site with Ezra, like Ezra's brand. Ezra's fans can be driven to our site for his discs, and because a lot of people just see us as YouTubers, which we are, but we're also a retail store, so kind of helping merge those together also works well. So, but really, the main reason for sponsoring him and for sponsoring Trinity this year was just their values, who they are, and their vibe as a person really meshes well with Foundation's values, personality, all of that. So I think that's where it just made a lot of sense for us. Neither of them are we looking for direct ROI. Ezra's obviously a bigger deal for us as far as like actually commitment, and he's a higher level player currently. Trinity is a rookie this year. I think she has a lot of potential, but this is her first year on tour, so it's not as big of a commitment. But I think both of them, we want to support them on the road, and it's less about what the company can get out of it and more about what we can do to help build them up, and whatever we get out of it is a plus. So I think that is more or less our logic behind it. So hopefully that all makes sense. I'm excited for this weekend. I'm excited for you to see what's going on within disc golf with Foundation, what we're launching with outside of disc golf with Foundation, and how all that's going to work together. We'll talk about it again next week once the announcements have all happened, and the new stuff's all launched. I'm really excited for that. So next week's episode, we can go into the nitty-gritty details of what all that looks like, and I'm excited for y'all. I think it's going to be a blast. I'm excited for us to kind of get into it and hit the ground running with some of this stuff. So I'm really excited, and I think y'all will enjoy it all. Appreciate y'all being here as always. A little bit of a longer episode, but hey, it's a good time. So talk to you again next week. See you then.